You ever notice how some places feel wrong the second you hear their name? They call this patch of mountain Block 7 on the company maps, but nobody local called it that. If you stopped at the little gas station on the way up like Cody did on his first day, you got the real name. Deadman's Stand. The guy at the counter said, ringing up diesel and stale coffee. Trees grow weird up there. Sound travels wrong. Place don't want you. Cody laughed because that's what you do when you're the new guy and someone tries to spook you. You laugh and pretend that chill running up your spine is just the door letting in cold air. He carried his coffee back to the crummy, that beat to hell company pickup, and climbed in as dawn smeared a gray bruise over the tree line. Miguel, the foreman, caught his eye in the rear view. You get ghost stories with the coffee? Something like that, Cody said, buckling his seatbelt. He says the forest doesn't want visitors. Dale, riding shotgun with a cigarette plaster to his lower lip, snorted. Yeah? Forest doesn't cut my checks. Lena sat squeezed in next to Cody, clipboard on her knees, beanie pulled low over her dark hair. Did he call it Deadman's Stand? She asked. Yeah, you know it? Just stories, she said. Old timers say the company tried to log it in the 80s, packed up overnight, never came back. Miguel rolled his shoulders under the seatbelt. They packed up because they ran out of money, he said. Not because the trees got mad at him. Sure, Lena said. She didn't sound sure. In the truck bed behind them, chainsaws, gas cans, and toolboxes rattled. Farther back on the road, the skidder lumbered along on its own, driven by Raj. That engine had a growl to it, like something big and mechanical that never quite belonged in a forest. As they climbed, the road narrowed. Pines leaned in close. Fog clung low along creek beds. The air smelled like wet bark, old moss, and the metallic tang of chain oil. Cody watched the forest slide by and tried not to notice how every branch looked just a little too much like a hand reaching for the truck. They reached the landing just as the weak morning light spilled over the ridge. It wasn't much, just a rough clearing carved into the slope. Mud rutted by tires, stumps around the edges like bad teeth. But what surrounded it? That's what stuck with you. The trees were huge, not just big timber. Huge, old trunks scarred with lightning, draped in moss. Bark twisted like flexed muscle. They rose so high the canopy knitted together, turning the daylight green. Damn, Dale said as he stepped out. His voice came out smaller than he meant it to. Big timber, Miguel said, but he sounded more careful now. We'll keep it short today, get the lay of the land. The forest answered with nothing. No birds, no creek noise, no wind in the branches. Just the tick of cooling engines and the clink of chains, and somewhere down the road the distant clank of Raj easing the skidder into place. Silence thick as a blanket. Where's all the birds? Cody asked. Cold morning, Dale muttered. They'll start up. They didn't. By mid-morning they were working in the first marked corridor. Miguel walked ahead with a paint can slashing bright orange on the trunks he wanted. Dale did the felling. Cody and Lena limbed and bucked. Raj ran the skidder, dragging logs down the landing in long muddy arcs. It was the usual rhythm. Saws screaming, chains biting, wood cracking. A tree would lean, creak, then come over with a slam you felt in your knees. Every time a tree hit the ground, the sound died fast, and right after it, the silence pressed back in, the way water rushes into a hole. Once, Cody killed his saw to refuel and heard something just at the edge of hearing. A low whistle. Not a bird's call, not quite human either. It slid up and down the scale like somebody warming up vocal cords they didn't use much. He froze, gas can in hand. You hear that? He called to Lena. She flicked her saw off and pulled an earmuff aside. Hear what? Cody held his breath. Nothing. Just the tick of the hot saw, his own pulse in his ears. "Thought I heard something," he muttered. "Never mind." She watched him a second longer than he liked, then nodded and started her saw again. The noise rushed back in. The feeling didn't leave. They ate lunch sitting on a fallen log at the edge of the cut. The light here felt wrong, muted and green. Branches overhead were so thick they laced the sky shut. Raj unwrapped his foil packet of curry. The spice smell sliced right through the gasoline and sap. "Anyone else notice there's no wind?" he asked. He was right. The treetops didn't move, not a sway, not a sigh. The air just sat there, like a room full of people holding their breath. Dale chewed slowly on his sandwich. "Stories say this stand's bad," he said. "Back when they tried cutting it before, some guy swore something pushed over the trees they hadn't touched. Just shoved them down." "Landslide," Miguel said out of habit. "Yeah, but only the trees he painted," Dale said, tapping ash into the forest floor. Said it was like something was answering him, tree for tree. Cody swallowed a lump of lukewarm coffee. "You believe that?" Dale looked at the wall of trunks just beyond the landing, so close they felt like a crowd with its back turned. "I believe most folks don't walk away from paying work unless something's wrong," he said. "Relax," Miguel told them. "If a squirrel sneezes out here, somebody calls it a demon. We work smart, we work safe. We're out in a few weeks, that's all." Lena's eyes were locked on something past Cody's shoulder. Her face had gone still. "What?" Cody asked quietly. She narrowed her eyes. The skin between her brows pinched. Then she gave her head a sharp little shake. "Thought I saw a stump," she said. "It doesn't matter." Cody turned to look. There was no stump, just trees standing too close together, shadows braided between them. The first footprint showed up a little after 2. Cody was dragging limp wood toward the skid trail when his boot stopped halfway into a depression in the forest floor. At first he thought it was just a puddle mark, or someplace water had softened the duff. But the shape was too clear. Toes, a heel, an arch. Like a human footprint, if a human had a foot over twice the size it should have been. He stared. His brain tried to shrink it, tried to force it down into something reasonable. It wouldn't go. Dale walked up, saw hanging from his right hand. "You stop working, start thinking about how little they pay you? That it?" he asked. Cody pointed down. "Look." Annoyance drained out of Dale's face. He stepped closer and crouched, glove resting next to the print. The toes overlapped his knuckles. "Bear?" Cody asked, knowing it wasn't. Bears left claws. Their tracks weren't this human. Dale's gaze swept the ground. "One track," he said. "No stride, no others, no claw marks, nothing." He straightened up. Could be some joker with a carved wooden foot trying to scare crews off. "In the middle of nowhere?" Cody asked. "People get bored," Dale muttered. "Don't tell Miguel. Last thing we need is him thinking we're all seeing things." He stepped right into the print and ground it out under his boot. The forest felt closer after that, heavier, like it had turned its head toward them. By the time the shadows stretched long enough between the trees, the crew was worn out, sore, and more than ready to be back at the landing. Night falls fast in a county like that. One minute the sky above the ridge is streaked gold, the next it's just gone, and the trees turn into black cutouts. The temperature dropped hard. Miguel fired up the generator. Its growl pushed the silence back a little bit. Light spilled from the tiny bunk trailer and the company had hauled up there. Inside, the 5 of them felt too loud, too bright, like they were in a fish tank. "Tomorrow we push deeper," Miguel said, stirring a dented pan of stew. "I want that first corridor done by Friday." Raj, halfway through a spoonful, froze. "You hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" Miguel said. The generator hummed. A phone deep in someone's pocket buzzed weakly, trying and failing to find a signal. Forks clinked on enamel bowls. And then they heard it. A knock. A sharp crack from the woods above the landing. It sounded exactly like a baseball bat hitting a telephone pole. Everyone went still. Then again. Knock. From a different location. Higher up. Closer. "That's just a tree shifting," Miguel said. But he set his spoon down. Trees groan, branches snap. You know those sounds if you work out there. This wasn't that. This was deliberate. 3 clean hits, evenly spaced, echoing through the trunks. Dale's face had gone slack. 3 knocks, he said quietly. Old guys used to talk about that. From what? Cody asked. His own voice sounded thin in his ears. Dale didn't take his eyes off the dark window. From what you're thinking, he said. The knocks stopped. The silence after them felt worse than the sound. The forest listened to them breathe. Miguel tried to laugh. It came out wrong and died halfway. Eat up, he said gruffly. We're up at 5. That night, Cody lay on the top bunk, staring at the ceiling less than a foot above his nose, and listened. At first, all he heard was the generator's dull rumble, like a heartbeat. And then, from outside, drifting in through the cheap walls, a slow, rising whistle. Not quite human, not quite animal. Low at first, then sliding up, then back down again, searching for a pattern. Cody held his breath. From somewhere upslope, another whistle answered. His mouth went dry. He almost called down to the others. Almost. Instead, he lay there with his eyes wide open, counting the shifts in pitch, until the whistles faded and the generator sputtered out. When the hum died, the quiet that replaced it felt like a lid snapping shut. He didn't sleep much after that. The forest made its opinion clear on the second day. In the daylight, the corridor they started looked worse. The fresh stumps gaped up like missing teeth. The break in the canopy let a hard strip of sky in that didn't belong. We did that? Raj said, hands tucked in his pockets. Looks like vandalism. Welcome to forestry, Miguel said. Grab your saws. They got back into the rhythm. Saws howled, chips flew, but that feeling of eyes on the back of your neck never really left. Mid-morning, Lena killed her saw and waved them over. Guys, she called. Her voice had that tight, clipped edge. They slogged through slash to where she stood. At first, Cody didn't understand what she was looking at. About 8 feet up a hemlock, someone had twisted a handful of small branches together in a rough loop. Hanging from that loop on strips of peeled bark were bones, little ones, white, clicking softly against each other. Bird bones? Maybe. Maybe not. On the trunk below, long vertical gouges raked through the bark. Not wild panic scrapes. Straight, spaced like fingers. Bear? Miguel said automatically, but even he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Bears don't make decorations, Lena whispered. Dale leaned in, sniffed and winced. You smell that? Under the gasoline and fresh sap, there it was. A thick, musty stink, like a wet animal that had been living in its own sweat too long. Stronger than any human BO, but close enough to make your stomach turn. We're in somebody's space, Raj said. Somebody who thinks it's theirs. Some survivalist living off the grid, Miguel said. Fine, he can move his bone wind chime. No, Lena said, steady. We leave this tree. We mark it and we work around it. Miguel's jaw worked. For a second, it looked like he was going to argue. Then his shoulders sagged a fraction. Fine. Flag it, leave it. We don't touch this one. They backed away without quite meaning to. The way you do when you realize you've just stepped a little too far into someone's room. As they turned back toward the cut, Cody glanced over his shoulder. For half a heartbeat, he saw something between two trunks farther up the slope. Not detail, just shape. Tall enough that its head brushed a low branch, wide through the shoulders, darker than the shadow it stood in, like the forest had grown a new piece that didn't match. He blinked and it was gone. He didn't say a word. That afternoon, whatever lived up there stopped hinting and started pushing. Raj had the skidder on the landing, chaining up another log when a rock the size of a grapefruit blasted out of the tree line and slammed into the side of the equipment trailer. The metallic bang snapped everyone's heads around. Cody caught sight of the stone bouncing into the mud. Rock slide? Raj shouted over the engine, eyes wide. From where? Lena pointed up at the ridge. There's nothing but trees uphill. Another rock came flying. This one arced lazily out of the shadows and landed near the fuel drums, hard enough that Cody felt it through his boots. Hey! Miguel roared like he could argue with the forest. We're working here! The woods said nothing. Something moved between the trunks mid-slope. Big, dark, too fast to get a good look at, but slow enough that Cody knew two things instantly. It was on two legs, and it was much, much taller than any person had a right to be. His heart slammed against his ribs. Could be kids, Miguel said, grasping at the last normal explanation. Throwing rocks from the brush. With what, a catapult? Raj muttered. No more rocks came, but from then on until sundown, every snap of a branch had them flinching, waiting for another impact. They should have left that night. They didn't. Bills don't care about stories. Rent isn't impressed by footprints, and walking off a block can mean walking off a job. So they cooked like normal, joked louder than they needed to, and climbed into their bunks pretending their hands didn't shake. Around midnight, the generator coughed, sputtered, and died. The lights winked out one by one. The dark that rushed in felt thick enough to touch. Cody lay on the top bunk, eyes wide open. The quiet had a texture to it now. Then, something brushed up against the trailer. A soft scrape at first. Metal flexed with the contact. The bunk frame vibrated against his ribs. He held his breath. The scrape turned into a slow, heavy drag, like a hand too big for any normal body, palm flat, fingers spread, sliding across the corrugated metal from front to back. Right behind his head, from the same spot on the wall, just inches from his face, came a sound he'd remember for the rest of his life. A huff, deep, wet, alive. The sound of air being pulled into lungs far bigger than his. It was breathing on the trailer. Cody bit down hard on the inside of his cheek to keep from gasping. Blood flooded his mouth, metallic and hot. The bunk below him creaked. Dale was awake. Just that tiny shift in the springs told Cody he wasn't alone in hearing this. The breathing paused. Then, at the little window by the top bunk, something tapped. Once, twice, 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. Too high off the ground for a normal person. Too slow in space to be a branch scratching. Jesus, Raj breathed from the other side of the trailer, voice barely there. The tapping stopped. Whatever it was moved along the wall, the footprints outside heavy enough that the frame shuddered with each one. You could feel the weight, like it was stomping on your chest from outside. A few moments later, from deeper in the stand, came a roar. Not a bear, not a cat, not anything that belongs in a field guide. It started low, a rumble in the dirt, then rolled up and out until it shook the trailer walls. It was so loud the air inside seemed to vibrate. You didn't hear it with your ears as much as you felt it in your bones. Birds exploded out of the trees, shrieking, branches cracked. Then, as quickly as it started, it cut off, and the silence dropped back into place with a slam. Nobody slept after that. They lay there and watched the seams of the trailer gradually turn from black to gray as dawn seeped in, expecting at any moment to see a face pressed to the window. When they finally cracked the door and stepped outside, the first thing they saw were the tracks. Enormous, bare human-shaped footprints churned the ground around the trailer. They led away into the trees like a path. On the metal just beside the front window, smeared in dried mud, was a handprint, long, splayed with a thumb. The tips of the fingers reached from bottom of the window to the top of the frame. "Bear," Miguel said, voice hoarse from not using it. Standing up, paws, mud. "Bears don't have thumbs," Lena whispered. Nobody argued. They tried to walk off the job. Miguel climbed to a high point on the ridge until his phone caught a single shaky bar of reception. The others stayed below, standing among the ferns, watching him talk. "Something's wrong with this block," he said into the phone. They could all hear the strain in his voice. "You send another crew up here, they're gonna walk too." On the other end, even from down there, they could tell the supervisor wasn't impressed. "What's wrong with it?" the man asked. Miguel looked back toward the landing, his gaze snagged on one massive print half filled with water and fallen needles. "We've got something up here," he said carefully. "Harassing us, throwing rocks, messing with equipment, getting too close at night. I'm not losing anybody to this hill." "Someone," the supervisor repeated. "You mean kids?" "I mean someone who doesn't want us here," Miguel said. "Well, we've got contracts, permits. It's a legal block," the man snapped. "If you've got trespassers, call the sheriff." "No signal to call anyone unless I hike up here," Miguel said. "Conditions aren't safe. You want bodies on your conscience?" "Foreman's discretion," the supervisor said, voice going ice cold. "You walk off that block, you walk off the job." The line crackled, then dropped. Miguel stood there for a second longer, shoulders tight, phone dangling from his hand. Up above him for the first time since they arrived, the treetops shifted, just a whisper of movement. Then they went still again. He came back down. "Well?" Dale asked. Miguel looked like he had aged 10 years on that ridge. "We finished today," he said. "Half day, then we reassess." "You just got told if you leave, you're fired," Dale said. "It wasn't a question." Miguel didn't answer. "We'll help you finish today," Lena said quietly. "Then we all leave together." Miguel blinked hard, then nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "Together." If the forest had an opinion, it kept it to itself. The mountain wasn't quite done with them yet. They cut as fast as they could without crossing the line into stupid. Everyone felt the clock ticking in their bones. Around noon, Cody was dropping a mid-sized fir on the edge of the block. He made his face cut, set the back cut, did everything by the book. But trees have minds of their own sometimes. This one twisted on the stump as it went. Its crown snagged into the branches of a cedar beside it and stuck there, half fallen, trunk hanging at an angle overhead. A widowmaker. "Back!" Miguel shouted. "Everybody back!" They scattered out of the danger zone. The trapped tree creaked, its weight groaning against the cedar. At any second it could slip free and come down wherever it felt like. Then, from deep in the stand behind the cedar, came another of those knocks. Just one. It wasn't the sound of a saw. It wasn't the sound of an axe. It sounded like something big slamming into the trunk from the other side. The cedar shuddered. The trapped fir tore loose, but instead of dropping straight down or whipping sideways, It rotated mid-fall like a hand had guided it. It crashed to the ground away from the crew, landing almost perfectly along the skid trail. Cody stared, chest heaving. "Did you see that?" Raj whispered. "Yeah," Dale said, a weird mix of fear and awe in his voice. "We just got helped." Lena's face had gone pale. "Or it wanted to show us," she said, "that it can put a tree wherever it wants, whenever it wants." They stood there, soaking in what just happened. Something out there could knock trees over, on purpose. "Half day," Miguel said roughly. "That's it. We finish this line, then we get out." Nobody argued. The forest's last message came an hour later. Cody stepped off the cut line to take a leak, deeper into the trees where the saw noise died down. Out there, the quiet was muffled like someone had piled blankets over the world. He was zipping up when he heard his name. "Cody." Soft, close, in Dale's voice. "Yeah?" he answered, turning automatically. Nobody was there. Just the undergrowth, the trunks, the shadows. "Dale?" he called. From deeper between the trees, the same voice answered, almost the same. "Cody, this way." It stretched his name just a hair too long. The tone was off by just enough to twist something in Cody's gut. He took a step forward, then stopped. The ground in front of him was undisturbed. No boot prints, no broken branches, no sign anyone had walked that way all day. A sour, musky stink rolled over him, stronger than before, strong enough to taste. "Dale, this isn't funny," he said, backing up now. "Cut it out." Silence. Then, from directly above him, from a height no person could reach from the ground, came a sound. A chuckle. Deep, rattling, amused in a way that had nothing to do with human behavior. Cody ran. He crashed through the brush, scraping his arm, snagging his sleeve. The forest blurred around him. His heart hammered so hard that white started to creep in at the edges of his vision. He burst back into the open cut and nearly plowed into Lena. "Whoa," she said, snagging his arm. Hey, what happened?" "It talked," he gasped. "It talked. It sounded like Dale. It knew my name." Behind them, a tree Miguel hadn't marked, hadn't so much as looked at, shuddered. On a day with no wind, it swayed. There was a deep cracking sound as its roots tore and the trunk gave way. The whole thing toppled across the corridor, slamming down between them and the deeper part of the stand. A solid wall of wood. The message didn't need translation. "That line is closed." Miguel killed the saw. One by one, the others followed. The engines coughed into silence until the only thing left was the ping of cooling metal and their own breathing. They all stared at the fallen tree and the darkness beyond it. Nobody said bear this time. The forest waited. Miguel took off his hard hat and dragged a hand through his hair. His eyes were bloodshot. When he spoke, his voice shook just enough for them to hear it. "Pack up," he said. "We're done." "What about your job?" Raj asked. "I'll go swing a hammer in town," Miguel said. "I'm not losing any of you to this hill." No one argued. Leaving wasn't as simple as turning the key and rolling out. The forest wasn't going to make it that easy. As they hauled tools and cans and limbs back toward the landing, something moved alongside them in the trees. They didn't see it outright, not at first. They heard it. Heavy steps pacing them up slope, branches cracking, brush parting. Whatever it was walked on two legs. Every time Cody dared to glance upward, he saw just enough to make it worse. A flash of matted, dark hair between the trunks. The suggestion of a shoulder broad as a refrigerator door. Once an eye catching a streak of light and reflecting it back in a way that felt far too aware. He stumbled. Lena grabbed his elbow and kept him upright. "Don't look at it," she said quietly. "Just walk." They loaded the truck and the skidder faster than they ever had in their lives. No extra talking, no jokes, just the clank of chains and the rasp of straps. Miguel didn't bother making things as neat as usual. He shut the Crummies' door hard enough that the window rattled. "Everybody in," he said. As they started down the logging road, the trees on either side seemed to lean closer. Branches met overhead like fingers interlacing. 5 minutes down, a knock echoed from far up the slope. A second answered it farther along. Then a third, closer, so deep and loud that the steering wheel buzzed under Miguel's hands. "Is it saying something? Is it saying something?" "Don't come back," Dale said. "That's what it's saying." Nobody answered. Just before the road curved enough that they'd lose sight of Block 7, Cody looked back through the rear window. Up on the ridgeline, framed for one brief moment in the gap between the trees, something stood and watched them go. It was huge, tall enough its head brushed the branches above, wide enough that each shoulder nearly touched the trunk. Its arms hung low, hands lost in the dark fur around its thighs. He couldn't see details from that distance, just outline, just the clear, solid fact that it was real and standing upright. It raised one arm, not waving, not friendly, more like someone putting a hand on a fence post and saying, "This is mine." Then it stepped away and the trees swallowed it up. Cody turned back around, staring straight ahead, hands clenched in his lap until his knuckles hurt. The company did what companies always do. They sent another crew a month later. That crew lasted 3 days. The forms they filed when they left blamed equipment issues and unsafe terrain. But small towns talk, stories leak. It didn't take long before the people at the gas station were adding another set of names to the list of folks who wouldn't cut Deadman's stand. Block 7 stayed on the books for a while as pending. Eventually, some distant office stamped it with a new label, Conservation Area. Too pricey to log, better PR to leave it, let the old growth stand. The locals just nodded. They'd never tried to cut it in the first place. Years went by. The trees got older, taller. The wound of that first corridor healed over, mostly, a faint line under the canopy. Cody never logged again. He found work at a hardware store. Later, he apprenticed as an electrician. It was quieter, safer. Wires didn't watch you. Most days he could go hours without thinking about that hill. Then the right kind of silence would fall somewhere. A winter morning with fog pooling low, or a summer night when the air got too still. And he'd feel it again. The sense of something huge just past where you could see. He got married, had a son. When the kid wanted scary stories, Cody gave him the monsters from other people's forests. Not that one. Not Deadman's stand. Still, some nights, lying in the dark while the furnace hummed and the snow outside bounced just enough light in through the blinds, he'd find himself listening for a distant, remembered knock. One summer, they paved the old logging road, turned it into a scenic drive, put in a little turnout with a metal railing and a plaque about old-growth ecosystems and respecting natural heritage. People drove up in rentals, took pictures, posted them with nature hashtags. Cody went once. His son was 10, obsessed with rivers and rocks and anything that looked like adventure. Cody's wife said, "Let's go up, he'll love the view." Cody said yes before he thought too much about it, and by the time the road turned familiar under the tires, it was too late to back out without raising questions he didn't want to answer. They parked by the overlook. When Cody stepped out, the smell hit him like a memory. Wet earth, fir needles, that deep green living scent. His son ran to the railing. "Dad, look how big the trees are," he yelled. Cody walked over slower. There it was, Block 7. From that angle you could see how it was different from the surrounding forest. Darker, denser. Where the managed stands around it had a certain tidy patchwork to them. This chunk rose up almost like a single body. If you knew what you were looking for, you could see a faint, thin scar in the canopy where the first corridor had been long ago. Overgrown now, but not completely erased. A couple standing nearby read the plaque out loud, something about rare habitat and old growth. It didn't mention the rocks, the footprints, or the handprint on a bunk trailer wall. "Did you ever work up here?" his son asked, eyes bright, fingers curled around the rail. Cody swallowed. "Once," he said. "What was it like?" the boy asked. Cody looked out over the stand. He remembered the soft whistle in the dark answering another one upslope. The bone charm hanging 8 feet up a hemlock. The way a tree had fallen the one direction it shouldn't have been able to fall, except it did, and it saved their lives. He remembered something huge breathing against thin metal, tapping the window with a fingertip as long as his whole head. He remembered that shape on the ridge, raising its arm like a warning. It was... He searched for a word that didn't sound crazy. "It was a place that didn't want us," he said at last. His son frowned a little. "Trees don't want things," he said. "Some forests do," Cody quietly said. "And sometimes they get someone to speak for them." The boy turned back and stared at the stand like he was trying to hear something. A little breeze picked up just enough to ruffle the hair on their arms and shiver the highest branches of Deadman's stand. The sound that came down from there was a low, soft rush, like a whisper you couldn't quite catch. The hairs rose on Cody's neck. From somewhere deep in that dark patch of green, so faint that he could have told himself he imagined it, came a single knock. Distant, muffled, but there. The other tourists didn't even flinch. They went on snapping photos, chatting about lunch plans, posting their #forest bathing stories. Cody heard it. He felt it in the same spot in his chest that had clenched the night something tapped on a thin little window in the dark. He nodded once, almost without meaning to. Not quite a bow, but close. "Time to go," he said. On the walk back to the car, his son chattered about how cool the view was and how he wanted to hike down there someday. His wife slipped her hand into his and squeezed. She didn't ask. She could feel the tension in his fingers. She knew enough to wait until later. Behind them, the forest stayed where it was. No chainsaws up there anymore. No skidder. No generator hum. Just wind, rain, animals, and something bigger moving from trunk to trunk unseen. Every so often, when a tourist wandered off path a little too far, or someone started talking about how there was still good timber up on that hill if anybody had the nerve, the forest would answer. A carefully placed rock in the road, a tree toppled across a planned trail, a name whispered back in a voice the listener almost recognized. Not to kill, just to remind. The hill doesn't want you, and if you're smart, if you listen when the forest knocks back, you'll do what Cody and his crew did. You'll leave. You'll tell the story later, maybe by a campfire, maybe into a microphone in a dark room, swearing you saw something bigger than any bear and smarter than any wolf, something that walked on 2 legs and knocked on trees. You'll swear you heard it standing just outside the thin walls of a little trailer, breathing, listening to you breathe back. And somewhere out there, in a place the map still calls Block 7, but the locals know better, something tall and shaggy will pause in its slow patrol, tilt its head, and listen to the memory of your words carried on the wind. Harassing loggers, scaring them away, doing the one job the forest needed done, keeping the chainsaws out. Some forests don't need fences. they've got something bigger watching the tree line. If this story stuck with you, like the video to show you made it out, subscribe for more Campfire Tales in the Dark, and comment what scared you most, the knocks, the footprints, or the voice using his name. Until next time, keep the lights low and the woods at a distance. Good night.